Welcome to the Talking Prisoner podcast. You're with myself, Matt Batten, and host Ken Mulholland. Good afternoon, Ken.
Good afternoon, Matt.
Today's a really special day. This is our second episode, and we have a huge guest with us. He was a huge part of Prisoner, starting over 208 episodes. But not only did he work on Prisoner, he was on a lot of iconic Australian classic TV shows such as Division 4, Homicide, Cop Shop, Matlock Police. He began his acting career in the late 1960s with graduating from the National Institute of Dramatic Art, which is known as NIDA. He currently resides in Sedona, Arizona. He was the first male officer to appear on Prisoner, and he is none other than Gerard Maguire, who played Deputy Governor Jim Fletcher, also known as Fletch the Lech. Welcome to the Talking Prisoner podcast, Gerard.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's amazing to have you on. How are things where you are at the moment?
Beautiful as usual. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world if people haven't come here. Unfortunately, it's become one of the prime tourist destinations of America, especially after COVID, when people couldn't travel anywhere else. And so we are inundated with people who are here. Makes moving around the town a little bit difficult, but we're a little bit isolated from the main drag. And so we enjoy the beautiful high altitude air and the superb scenery, which Sedona is famous for.
Wow, yeah, it looks amazing over there.
It is.
Now, it's an absolute honour to have you as our second guest. And
thank you.
I have lots of questions, of course, about Prisoner and your time on there. But we'd love to go back to the start of your life, just to...
Oh, no!
Okay.
You can remember back that far, can't you?
Yeah. Okay, I'll do my best. I'm getting a bit old, you know.
Where did you actually grow up as a child?
On the beach of Maroubra.
Oh, yes. Apparently you like to catch a wave or two.
Yeah, I've been a surfer for as long as I can. My first memory is standing on a beach, and I learnt to swim before I could walk. And, I've been a body surfer, and I didn't do much board surfing. I did a little bit of board surfing, but I was, I always loved being in the water. What the hell am I doing in a high desert? I've got no idea, but at least there's sandstone all around me. So it gives me some feeling of being back by the ocean.
Okay. So before acting, what sort of jobs did you have prior to acting?
Started off as a cadet journalist.
Okay.
In the days before, journalism was like an apprenticeship. And worked with some amazing people. And I was a bit unsure about what I wanted to do with my life. And so I tried lots of different things. I worked for a stock and station agent for a while and went out into the bush. I started to learn to be a wool classer, and probably people don't know what that is, but it's a way of classifying different quality wool into their various categories, and that was quite nice. I liked that. I also had a delivery business on my motor scooter. I'd take in the days when they used to print things off blocks, I'd take them from the compositors to the printers on my little motor scooter around the streets of Sydney. So that was a little business I had, which was quite fun. What else did I do? Oh, at one stage, I went out and sold encyclopedias door to door.
Wow.
And that was about it. I don't think I remember doing any other jobs before I got into NIDA. That was about it.
What motivated you to become an actor?
I never was motivated to become an actor. It was all serendipity. I think I was driven by my hormones more than anything else. In that it was, if you ever want to understand why a guy does something, provided, well, I suppose it applies to whether you're straight or gay, look for the other person, either the woman or the man. The French have an expression for it, cherchez la femme, look for the woman. That's what happened with me. I was actually studying to go back. I'd left high school, but I wanted to get back into university, and so I was doing some coaching, being coached to sit for a university entrance examination. And in the other room was the person that was teaching people literature, which I didn't need. I needed math and physics and the sciences to get in, but other people needed English, and he was this guy was teaching the English course, and one of his students was a young woman that I quite fancied, and they were putting on shows for the University of New South Wales. It was called DRAMSOC, the University of New South Wales Drama Society. And so I went along to help build sets. And while I was doing that, they needed a guy for one of the reviews. So they said, well, it's only a couple of lines. Can you do that? Sure, I did it. I was okay. And then one of the professors said, look, we need a guy, because they were always looking for men. They had plenty of actresses, but they didn't, which was nice for me, but they didn't have enough guys. So I was asked to do a play with Victor Emelianov, I think it was at that stage. And so I eventually did 2 plays without actually being at the University of New South Wales, but I was appearing in the University of New South Wales student plays that went to the drama festivals in Newcastle, and then the second one went up to Brisbane. And it was in one of these that I was approached by my director professor, Professor Philip Parsons, and he said, look, you've created some interest from NIDA, and they think that you should maybe audition. He said, no, I don't recommend you do that. He said, I recommend that you continue with what you're trying to do, go back to college, get your degree, and then you can decide whether you want to be an actor or not. He said, because you'll always need a second string to your bow. And I thought to myself, the second string to my bow? If I had a second string and it was easier than the first string, I'd probably take the second string, So I thought, no, bugger it, I'll give it a go. And Robin Lovejoy then approached me. He said, yeah, well, this is the audition process. And I got the scripts, went up there, and I was accepted. There's some exaggeration about how many people auditioned that year. This is way back in the early days of NIDA, 1966. 66, yeah. These days, there are thousands of people that audition for NIDA. And I don't know what the percentage that they take from the auditions, but with ours, it was a very, very small number that auditioned, that got accepted. And in our year, there were 40 that were accepted in the first year. And back then, it was only a 2-year course, a diploma course. I later went back again and got my degree, but they, at the end of first year, they cut us down to 14 out of the 40.
Wow.
And I was one of 10 men and 4 women. And it was a great year. People that you'd know, Ken, Harold Hopkins, David Downer, Gregory Ross. I don't know whether you knew Jonathan Sweet, Kate Fitzpatrick. Probably one of the most successful 90 years ever.
Mm.
Didn't have the real big star like, Mel Gibson or Judy Davis or Kate Blanchett, all subsequent year graduates. But, these were all people that made a living. Deirdre Rubenstein, that made a constant, they were in work all the time, It was a terrific year.
Wow. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it was. It was great. I changed my life for the better.
Yeah.
You've worked both in Australia and in America.
Yeah.
And can you tell us how your impression of how they compare?
Boy, Ken, you ask a really difficult question. I mean, it depends what area you're talking about. One of the things I've discovered about it, I used to have a little bit of sort of snobbishness about American actors. I thought, that they were all a little shallow, or, they were too bound up in the method to be able to, free up, and changed my mind about that completely after having worked with them. It's so competitive here for actors to get work that you really have to be on the top of your game to be able to even get a look in at an audition. And these actors, they're either doing class work, they're working in small theatres, and they're just working their butt off, and they're terrific. I just love working with American actors. I've met very few prima donnas. One of the jobs I did, which I still get like 2 cents from SAG for, was an episode of the reboot of I did the one episode of the Brady Bunch where I came in at the end, and I think I had 2 lines in it. But I was treated like a star on this thing. I had my own dressing room. I met all the famous Brady Bunch people, and they were as nice as pie. The guy, Mr. Brady, whatever that actor's name was, he's since dead, he's since died. But he came knocking on my door. He said, "Can I come in?" And I went, "Yeah, yes, of course, come in, welcome." He said, "I thought we should run over our lines." And I said, "Yes, definitely." I was as nervous as hell because, these were people that were like, I'd never thought in my life that I'd ever work with, but there we were doing an episode of the Brady Bunch. It was the reboot of the Brady Bunch, and that was like when I first went to the US in '88.
Oh,
and I still
was that the movie?
No, it was.
Oh.
They actually did it as a TV special or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
They did a couple of episodes, but it never really took off again. But I still get royalties from that of like 2 and 3 cents because it's been played. The SAG never give up. No matter where it's played, you get a royalty from it. But I've been impressed with them, the nicest people in the world, and they're so good. I learned a lot.
Is it? I read somewhere about the theatre in America. There's a lot of people that are acting that actually just jump into theatre for free just to get their nose into the acting industry. Is that true?
That's some of the best theatre I've seen, because I live sometimes in Los Angeles as well. We have a place there. There's a company there called Antaeus, and that was set up by really well-known, probably like 2nd and 3rd string actors. They're not big stars, but they're people you've seen, and they work there basically for free. I saw a production of Uncle Vanya, which is the best production of Uncle Vanya I've ever seen. The acting was fantastic, and every time we're in LA, we couldn't see them because of COVID, because they're not there anymore. And I was on the verge of working with them because I really wanted to work with them. They were just terrific. Production values are really good in these 99-seat theatres. I did get to work briefly with Ed Harris and on a production that I worked sort of as production assistant on a show with Ed Harris that my wife produced for the Met Theatre, which was a 99-seat theatre. And there was Ed Harris working with some really, really fine actors. And, they couldn't be nicer. I did a couple of play readings with John Voight. Not someone I want to know now, but back then he wasn't as nutty as he is now. But he was a good friend of my wife's as well. Working with them really changed my attitude towards them, and it really improved my. I always was a little. I like to improvise a little bit, I would sort of get my lines right. They wouldn't exactly be right, but I'd get the meaning across. But if you don't turn up for an audition word perfect, you don't get the job.
Yeah.
It's very different. They're very well prepared. They take it very, very seriously, and they're some of the nicest people in the world.
Wow. I mean, we could talk about theatre all day because it's amazing. I've gone to a lot of theatre shows here in Melbourne and taken my daughter, The Wizard of Oz, and all the productions, and it's just, it's brilliant. But
Well, I'll tell you something. You know, I've done a lot of theatre work in Australia.
Yeah.
Some of the best work I've done has been here in this town, in Sedona, in a professional theatre that we had. We don't have it any longer, which is unfortunate. But I did The Lion in Winter and a couple of other plays, and it's the best work I've ever done. And we did a play called Art, which was a very popular play. A lot of people that saw it in New York and saw it in London preferred our production. Lion in Winter, I can't tell you the compliments I've got from people that saw that. And I felt so relaxed here, you know, going from the pressure of subsidized theatres, big theatres, you know, 450, 500 seat theatres, the West End, to a small regional theatre where, you know, if you fail, it doesn't matter, really. You don't want to fail. You want to make sure that the audience has a great time, but it's not going to destroy your career.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you feel this sense of artistic freedom that I found hard to find, with maybe 5 or 6 exceptions in Australia. Some of the plays I did with David Williamson, I felt that same thing. But here, you know, being able to do these great plays with really good actors. We've had a lot of top-line professional actors that retire to this part of the world. We're all a bit long in the tooth, but that doesn't matter. You know, we can pretend.
Well, let's get, I'm going to hand over to Ken, but let's get into the, I think one of the greatest shows in television history, Prisoner, which is why we're here. So we're going to break down your first episode shortly. But did you watch Prisoner before you got the part of Jim Fletcher?
I saw a couple of episodes, yes.
Sort of homework.
Yeah.
So how did you actually come to get the part? Is that a good art or a bad art?
It's an old Spider's Home story.
Can you tell the Spider Home story just for the fans? Just because
it's a Larson cartoon. It shows 2 old spiders with no teeth sitting on the porch of the old Spider's home, and one old spider says to the other, "Did I ever tell you about the time that I was sitting in the middle of my web and a fly flew straight down my throat?" And the other old spider says, "Only about 1,000,000 times." So this is an old Spider story in a way. It's a bit long, that's all. Okay. I was wanting to get a bit of refinancing on my house in Williamstown. And I've been to see my bank manager, and he'd been pretty nice to me over the years. And I said, you know, I just wanted to free up some money to do some renovations and things. And he said, "Oh, that won't be a problem." And writing out the things. And he says, "It says here you're an actor." And I said, "That's right." He said, "Yeah, but what's your real job?" And I said, no, I'm a professional actor." And he said, "Oh, well, you know, I've never heard of you. You know, what have you done?" And I said, "Well, do you ever go to the theatre?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, you know, I've done a lot of guest parts in television shows and things like that." And he said, "Oh, well, I might have seen that." He said, you actually make a living out of this, do you?" And I said, well, yeah, I do." Okay. And so he looked at my tax returns and he approved the thing, you know. Then I thought to myself, you know, here it is. I've been working for like 12 years, and, you know, the bloke in the street doesn't know who the hell I am. And you go to a bank manager and they don't think you've got a real job. So I'd been working in the theatre with Annie Lucas. We'd toured together in a David Williamson play, Jugglers 3. And Annie, as some of you probably know, is married to Ian Bradley. And Ian was one of the producers of the show. And so I knew that the show was happening, and I thought, well, you know, maybe I can get a job with Ian. So I just rang him up and I said, "Could I come in and see you?" He said, "Yeah, sure." So I came into the Grundy's office, the production office there, walked in, had a chat to Ian. He introduced me to the other producers. And they said, I said, "What, have you got something for me?" And they said, "Well, we're thinking about bringing in a male officer. Would you be interested in the job?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And next thing, I was filming. And that's how it happened, that quickly.
Wow.
Didn't have to audition, thank God. I'm terrible at auditions, but yeah.
So no audition. It was just you walked in and the part was created for you.
To tell you the truth, I don't think I think I maybe got maybe one or two parts from auditions early on in my career and then later in my career. But apart from that, it's always been work that's come to me, you know, that's been offered.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
When you got the part of Jim Fletcher, did you know, or did you have any concept of the fact that you would eventually be on it for more than 200 episodes?
Are you kidding me? I think, you know, well, I thought if I got 3 months out of it, I'd be lucky, you know, because that's what your contract was for. It was for 3 months with an extension of 6 months. And then they, you know, up the extension, and the rest, as they say, is history, you know.
And the bang
No idea.
Well, none of us had any idea that show would run the length that it did.
No, because we weren't the glamour show, were we? You know, think of the other shows that were on, the Sullivans, you know, it had all this publicity with it, that they had all these big stars, you know, Lorraine Bailey and Paul Cronin and people like that in it, you know. Us, we were this funny little show, you know, in the studio with cardboard sets and, you know, a whole lot of character actors in it. You know, why was that going to be a hit?
Well, I having worked a couple of episodes or a handful of episodes of the Sullivans, so I actually got to catch up with Paul Cronin again from the days of Matlock Police, which I believe you appeared in at different times.
Yeah, many times I was beating somebody up or riding a motorbike. Matlock.
Because you played a lot of bad guys before prison, didn't you?
Yeah, Crawford used to cast me because I could ride a motorbike.
Yes, well, I mean, I must admit, I was in awe when I actually got to meet Michael Pate.
Yes, what a nice man, what a sweetheart. Yeah,
and I was just amazed that here I was in the studio working with this guy who'd gone from Australia over to Hollywood and appeared in films like I think he was in The Court Jester and various.
One of my favorite movies of all time. I play it for the kids every chance I get.
Well, you can play it for me anytime you like.
I love it.
I love it too. Yeah. Yes, you're right. It wasn't a glamour series, and no one believed that it would go past its original 13 or 14
episodes.
Episodes.
Yeah.
And it just exploded.
Yeah.
That's what brings me to my next question. It was doing quite well when you came on the show, and you know, it basically took Channel O at the time from being a low rating network to a high rating network. Did you feel any pressure coming on the show?
You always feel pressure, you know, no matter what job you're doing. But in the terms that you're describing it, because of, you know, the potential upside for the network, no. And indeed, they didn't put any pressure on us because, quite frankly, they didn't believe in us. I mean, we didn't get the big jaunts. We didn't get all the publicity people, you know, wanting to do stories for the TV week, or, you know, that was going to the glamour shows, you know, with the young pretty people in it, you know, they were getting all the TV covers and things like that. So we weren't under a lot of pressure. The pressure that we were on was to get the bloody thing done, you know, 2 hours a week.
Yes, that's the incredible pressure that was placed upon everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
And those 2 days, oh, sorry, you go, Ken.
Those 2 days of location plus the 3 days of studio, and plus, not for us, but for cast, going over the weekends with your lines and learning and moving from one episode to another and backwards and forwards. That must have been very, very difficult.
Yeah, it was work. It was work for sure. Yeah.
The type of acting, your type of acting, Gerard, do you class that as being method, or are you very much a stand and deliver type of person? You know, you do it, you don't bump into the furniture and you remember your lines sort of acting.
Well, at NIDA, you know, they drag us through all the Stanislavski stuff. So, you know, the old, when I hear a lot of these actors like Tony Hopkins talking about what it is about acting, they always sort of, it's not that they put down method or as a way of preparing for a part. But they usually, the ones that I think that are really good are the ones that basically know their script backwards, know the lines really, really, really well, which I wasn't that good at. But when I started doing work over here, I got really good at it. But I remember I was doing it before I did Prisoner. I did a television series called Luke's Kingdom. Brilliant, all film show with some of the best tech crew in the world, Johnny Seal, and great directors, Peter Weir, and this guy from England. I used to love to talk to him because he'd worked with some of the great legends of English theatre, and even Katharine Hepburn he was one of Katharine Hepburn's famous, most favourite directors. And I'd often ask him about what he wants from an actor. He said two things. He said, "I want you to know your lines so well that you've forgotten them."
Wow.
Yes.
And he said, and the other thing is, and I used to, we were on location at Bathurst, and the place we were staying had a cellar that hadn't been touched for years, and I found an old bottle of Penfolds Grange, which is, back then it wasn't the big deal it is now, and I found this bottle of wine in the cellar and got it for practically nothing and brought it to him at dinner time. I opened it up and I said, "Hey, you're really going to enjoy this. This is really good." And he said to me afterwards, he said, "Look," he said, "I've got no problem with you." He said, "You're a good actor." He said, "But I really wish you'd come to me with a performance like you just gave me that bottle of wine."
Interesting. And,
Yeah,
what did you think of the Penfolds?
It was great. It was good. It was good. It was still in good condition, amazingly.
It's probably worth thousands of dollars now.
It would be, yeah, it would be. But getting back to your question about the method, we were all taught method and expected to act that way. Our acting teachers at NIDA, especially Alan Edwards, were very, they were deep into the method. And we were, made to read Stanislavski and understand it. But I think acting comes back to empathy. Can you live truthfully in this imaginary world the way a kid can, the way a child can? I remember, I suppose, my first acting experience after I'd seen Peter Pan as a kid, and I was at my mate's house. It had this great backyard, and we'd sort of set up the pirate ship, and I was, running around the pirate ship, and I was singing the songs from Peter Pan, and not thinking that anyone was taking any notice of it, but his aunt and his mum and a couple of other people were sort of hiding around the house watching us, and they burst into applause afterward, and I went, "Oh, but I was in it, man. I was Peter Pan. I was there, and that sort of ability to be able to lose yourself in the part, know what the author is getting at, try to understand your character. You don't have to go into your own life and try and drag up memories which is one of the precepts of method, that, if you need to cry, you'll go into your life and you'd find something really, really tragic to cry about. But, I just think if the situation is such and it's written that way and what's being said makes you cry, it should make you cry. It shouldn't be a big deal. You don't have to go, "Oh, what made me cry all those years ago?" It's putting an area of difference between the script and you that you don't need to do. If you're in it, that's what I mean. Does that answer your question, Ken?
It does. And it really comes down to one word: empathy.
Yeah.
And I think that's emphasizing with that character that you're taking on.
Yeah.
And you just know when to react in certain ways.
And the most important thing is to listen to what's being said to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you listen to what they say, what the other character says, it should. That's why you should know what did that person just say to me and why, and then you can reply. Yeah.
Reaction.
Yeah.
Your character Jim Fletcher, were you ever able to suggest any storylines to the writers And were any of them ever used that you did suggest?
One of the most important ones was the very first episode, I think, is when I was in the bar with Vera, and I told her what my Vietnam experience was, what that episode, well, I think it was one of the first episodes I was in. That wasn't the scene that was written. When I got that script, having known a number of people that had been to Vietnam, I didn't buy what was, I can't remember how they wrote it, but I just didn't think it was particularly powerful, and I didn't think it was truthful enough. And a very good friend of mine, Bill Nagel, a director and writer, he wrote and directed a couple of films about Vietnam, and he was a good buddy of mine. And I took the script to him and I said, "What do you think of this?" He said, "This is bullshit." Sorry, but he said, "This is terrible." I said, "Yeah, I'm not happy with it." So we sat down and we wrote that scene. And, you know, the reason for Jim's phobia about blood was because he killed this little kid, thinking that the kid had a bomb, and the blood exploded all over him when he killed the kid with a, you know, high-powered assault rifle. And that was the scene that we wrote. And thankfully, you know, the producers accepted it, and we played it. We did it.
Wow.
Other storylines, you know, I just make suggestions about where the character might want to go, and sometimes they did it and sometimes they didn't. But actually, storyliner, no. If they wanted me to be a storyliner, I would have been happy to do that, but they never asked.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
The Odd Angry Shot was Bill Nagel's book, wasn't it?
Yes, and the movie too. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So he had some experience, some first-hand experience overseas.
Well, he suggested that thing with the kid. He said that was the thing that they were most, the thing that caused them much concern. That just like in Afghanistan now, you know, with these suicide bombers, you know, you never know that some little kid that comes up to you and says, "Hey, you know, have you got a chocolate?" could have a grenade in his hand, or, you know, and that's what they were worried about. Yeah. And, you know, if the kid didn't sort of expose what he had in his hand, you know, chances were you were going to get blown up. So, he related that story as something that I don't know whether it actually happened to him, but it's happened to one of his soldier friends. So it had an authenticity about it, which I was pleased.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we did get to the storyline thing. We're going to ask you about storylines and so forth. Can you explain to us how a writer or what a storyliner is?
Well, I don't know how it worked with Grundy's, but I have written a couple of series that came close to being produced, and we'd write the book for it, if you like. So you'd flesh out what the overall story was going to be, and then you'd break it down, and you'd look at each character, and you'd say, okay, well, what is the story through that episode that this character is going to be following, you know, the arc of that character. So that'd be the storyline. That's not writing the dialogue. That's writing what the scene's going to be. This scene is going to be about this, and they're going to be talking about that, and that will lead them on to the next scene, et cetera, all the way through. New character appears, you know, how does that affect the storyline? So that's the work that's done first up. And often that's sort of presented to the actual writer of the script, so that the script writer would get the storyline from the storyliners. So it might be like 5 or 6 people working on the storyline, and they have the responsibility for keeping the storyline going through the entire series. The writer of the episode gets that particular block from the storyliners, and then they fill it in. They, you know, create the dialogue. They might make some changes to the storyline, provided it doesn't affect the overall arc, because you've got to be able to take it from, especially in a show like Prisoner, which sort of had ongoing storylines all the way through. You know, this wasn't, you know, like an episode of Matlock or Division 4 or something, where you had a contained story within that 1 hour. So, there was some continuity of characters in all of those series, but in Prisoner, it was like, the storyline would carry over many, many episodes, not just the one isolated one. Does that sort of explain it?
Yeah, that's the way I would understand it to be. And
Yeah.
I just want to drop another name in here, Ray Lindsay, who
Yes.
was floor manager. Now,
Yeah.
he often went to the production meetings that happened, and
Yeah.
he would read the whole script, and
Yeah.
he would look at continuity and things that may be right or wrong or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ray was great. Is he still around?
Yes, he is.
Well, if you see him, give him my regards, will you?
I shall do.
Okay, good.
Sure. He's a grandfather over and over and over.
Join the club.
Matt, do you want to go next?
Yeah, no. Now, your last episode was 256, season 4, which we'll talk about shortly. But what was the reasons for your exit on Prisoner at the time?
That was sort of complicated. It was sort of mutual agreement between the producers and myself. My contract was coming up. They knew that I wasn't happy with the way I wanted to have more to do, basically, and they might have run out of ideas for me. I don't know. It may have been because they thought I was starting to get difficult to work with. Who knows? I mean, the Grundys were notorious for getting rid of people for very little reason. They in fact they fired a whole cast once, because they asked for more money. Yeah.
That happened on Homicide very early in the piece too, with
Crawford's. Yeah.
Yes, with Crawford's.
Yeah.
And that's when the likes of Les Damon and Leonard Teal and so forth came in.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. So, yeah, I can understand that situation. And also, you were looking for maybe something further in the future. I mean, where did you go to from Prisoner?
Well, having sort of gotten some degree of fame, I suppose you want to call it that, or that I thought, okay, notoriety and experience. I thought, well, indeed, it wasn't too bad. I did another series called Starting Out not long after that. Did a movie with Val and Colette.
That was Kitty and the Bagman.
Kitty and the Bagman, yeah, that was a fun part to play, yeah. And I was hoping for more film roles. I was hoping, that, and also I wanted to get back into the theatre, and I went back to the Melbourne Theatre Company as well. And by that stage too, I had a very busy voiceover career, which I still have. So that was. Yeah, I had plenty to do. I wasn't worried about leaving the series and not getting work, put it that way.
Right.
So we see that Jim Fletcher's promoted to governor of Beachmont.
Yeah.
Another prison. So was it left like that for you to maybe return to Prisoner? Was that on?
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I think if a certain producer was still working there, probably not. But if Ian Bradley was still running the show, he probably would have left it open for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Ian Bradley is a very nice guy.
He's a sweetheart. Love him and Annie. They're terrific, wonderful people.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I knew Ian when he was a professional gambler before he was a writer.
Yes, that's a fascinating story in itself.
You bet.
I've actually read The Parthian Shot. Ian's recent books or a while back about people in prison.
Yep.
About a women's prison. But an interesting, the thing I liked about that book was that you had to have empathy for probably the most nefarious type of character because it was double crossing of double crosses and double crossing each other. Interesting book.
Yeah, no, he was a very good plotter. I worked with Ian again on Embassy later on for the ABC, so I think he still liked me. Yeah.
I'll ask him.
When you see him, please say hi.
So you were Jim Fletcher was one of the most popular characters on Prisoner. After you left, did that open more doors? I mean, you're already an established actor prior to Prisoner, but did it open more doors?
No, it's the opposite, really.
It was the opposite. Wow.
Yeah, because you get typecast, you know.
Okay.
So, and it was funny getting back to the theatre. There's this sort of snobbery. They don't do that now. I mean, once you've got some degree of publicity value, they usually value you. But back then, you're a popular actor. You're not a theatre actor anymore. So it took me a bit to get back into the theatre, but I did.
Okay. Wow.
With you working on Prisoner, was there a big difference between Prisoner and a lot of the other television shows that you worked on?
Yeah, because we were doing that 2 hours a week thing.
So yes, so with the other shows before and after Prisoner, you probably were back down to doing a 1 episode type show or a 1 hour format.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first TV series I did, Luke's Kingdom, it was a full film crew. It was all shot on film. It was a co-production with Trident Television, which was Yorkshire TV. Huge budget, 10-day turnaround, all film, 10 days to shoot an hour, man. But, it was full production value because we set it in the early days of Australia in the 1820s. Terrific cast. And, one of the things I loved, I spent a lot of time on horseback, it was terrific. It's great.
So not only are you a man of the surf, but you're a man of the horse as well.
Well, I had to learn to ride pretty well on that show. Do you want another old Spider home story?
Yes, please.
Okay. This is one, no, Ken, you'll appreciate this, that when a writer writes something in a script, they often have no idea how long it takes to shoot that. This was one line in this script. It was about maybe 1.5 lines. It says, Luke and Samuel, that was me and my brother, drive the sheep to the river and cross.
Does it have a working title?
No. Yeah, it does. It's called Sand.
Right.
The guy that played my brother, he was the star of the show, English actor, very handsome English actor called Oliver Tobias. Fabulous horseman, really, really good. He got Johnny Seal to set up the camera because what we thought we'd do, well, let me set the scene for you. We had all the sheep lined up, ready to cross at the river. And we found it wasn't a deep river, it was like about that deep, it was only up to about your ankles. That was the area where we wanted the sheep to cross. Okay, so we had the professional shepherds there and they had them all set, ready to go. So this part of the river, the Safala River, it was nice and shallow and it was running nicely. And, it was fair distant, probably about, 45, maybe 20 yards to the other bank. That was the area where we wanted to cross. But then a little bit further downstream, it became very narrow and ran very fast and was quite deep. It was like a little waterfall down there. Now, you've got to put yourself into the mind of a sheep. Now, a sheep looks across that water and he thinks, shit, that's a long way to the other bank. Oh, look over here. We can almost just maybe 1 or 2 hops and we're there. So we're all trying to get the sheep to cross. And one of them goes, follow me, guys. And they jump into this fast flowing section of it. Whoops, off they go. They're all being washed down the river. The professional shepherds are out there going, oh shit, we get down there trying to grab hold of them and rescue them. I don't know whether we lost any sheep at that particular point, but we stopped getting them to cross the river. So eventually we blocked them so they wouldn't go there. And someone said, okay, let's put, one of the leaders of the sheep in the middle of this shallow part of it, and all the others would follow, because that's what sheep do, right? Sheep follow sheep. That's the legend. So they get the sheep and everything's going fine. And Oliver thinks, hey, Johnny, Johnny Seal, we can get this great shot. As he's riding this wonderful white horse. He said, set the camera up. He said, and I'll come charging into the river. And he said, and I'll lean down, because he could do all these horse tricks. I'll lean down and I'll grab one of the sheep and throw it back up onto the saddle and ride off. It'll look great. You know, the spray will come up and then going into the light, and it'll look great. It'll fabulous. So Johnny sets it up. Oliver comes riding into it. Now, one of the things that they didn't do to these sheep before they set them on it was to shear them. So they had a lot of wool. And you know what happens when a sheep with a lot of wool gets wet? It weighs a lot. And so Oliver comes riding up, thinking, you know, because he's picked sheep up before. We've been shearing them and everything. So he tries to pick up this sheep, and now it weighs about 10 tons, puts his foot on the stirrup. Now the strap, the saddle strap under the sheep, under the horse is now wet and slippery. And so instead of him being able to pick up the sheep and throw it on top of it, whoosh, he goes around underneath and ends up ass upwards underneath the horse. Didn't work out as he intended.
Did they keep that? Did they keep that section of film?
I hope so. There's an addendum to that, but it's too long. I won't go on with it. But that one little line, Luke and Samuel drive the sheep to the river and cross, took us about 3 days.
Especially with very weighty sheep.
Yeah.
You have on the end of the film, no sheep were harmed in this.
Well, I don't know.
How did you go with fan mail, Gerard? Did you get much for Fletch?
No, not as much as the girls got. They didn't. But again, I was a little bit upset with the network because they wouldn't pay for our mail, our return mail.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I seldom replied because I just didn't think it was fair, you know. Not that I minded. I would have liked to reply to something, but a lot of it was just, oh, you know, can you send us an autograph? Oh, I like you. You know, you think, well, fine, thank you very much. But you know, you're writing to the show. You're not really writing to me. It's nice that you appreciate me, but and we took it up. I think Val eventually got them to pay. You know, she was good at getting them to do things, but
shop steward.
Yeah, well, she took that on herself. Yeah, but the thing was that a lot of people got return fan mail. You know, that they'd reply to someone and that person would come back and that person would come back, and so you know, Sheila and Val and most of the prisoner people got a lot of fan mail. We didn't. Fiona and I didn't get as much as the prisoner girls.
The sympathy thing.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a lot of fan questions for you at the end of this, so you're
still
popular.
Okay. I haven't bored you silly with my old Spider Home stories.
No, they've been great. Obviously, we know Patsy King played Erica Davidson, the governor. Would you have liked to have seen Jim Fletcher be governor? Would that be a storyline? We know you took over acting governor at times and things like that, but actually a permanent governor.
Are you kidding me? That would have been my dream job. You know why?
Why?
Well, Ken, you know why. How many days a week did Patsy work?
I'm with you.
She was basically in one set. She would do all of her work on 1 or 2 days.
Exactly.
You know, she'd be in there working the whole time. Then she was off for the rest of the week. Whereas we'd have to come in at 5 in the morning. We'd do a couple of scenes in the morning. We might do one at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon and did the last one at 6 at night. And we were there 5 days a week.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Because maybe the fans don't realise that the scenes were shot. All the scenes for the governor's office, for instance, were shot consecutively.
Yeah.
Which would have made it very difficult for actors like yourself, where you had to appear in a certain amount of scenes in the rec room or whatever. Did you have trouble just getting your head around, oh, this is the block that we're doing, but then I'm now in another block? Did that get confusing?
No, usually the writing was pretty good that way. You know, we didn't, because I think that, you know, that sort of continuity was probably more of a problem for the prisoner girls, but not so much for us, because again, you know, we were more functionaries. We were usually standing there, or we'd interrupt a fight or something like that, you know. But you know, our storylines, we didn't really interact in those sets as much. That's what I said, you know, towards the end of it, that's where I felt I was being more of a functionary rather than, you know, sort of a character with, excuse me, with interesting things to do. But, you know, yeah, I'm just joking when I say I would love to have been the governor, but for that reason. But it would have been nice to be able to do that and have the rest of the week free to go surfing. You know, that would have been great.
Wasn't just a nice office you wanted.
No.
Were you aware at the time you were in prison that you had such a big following of female fans?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. No idea at all. You know, it did become a little bit difficult with my daughter. You know, she hated me being recognized, and you know, when it got really popular, and I'd go, you know, supermarket shopping with her, and people were stopping me all the time, and eventually I just couldn't do it after a while. You know, my wife had to do it all. So yeah, it became a problem. But at least it wasn't as bad as Angelina Jolie and Brad, you know, where they actually have to close the store so they can come down and shop at the supermarket in Malibu.
When they were stopping you in the street and things like that, what were they coming up to you to just ask about prisoner or autographs or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
The most embarrassing time was when I was on a nude beach in Noosa. This family
do tell
approached me, and I'm sort of thinking, I'm walking on the beach and I think, oh no, I think she's recognized me. And I think she was Italian or Greek, and she went, "Oh, Mr. Fletcher, you naughty boy." I went straight into the water, you know.
Oh dear.
She was there with the family, but they were all nude too, so it didn't matter that much. Anyway.
Sorry, that's very funny.
There's a story that you did a lot of stunts.
Mm-hmm.
Your own? Did you do your own stunts, or
yeah, all of them? Yeah.
And there was some story about you being concussed at one stage of the game and almost run over.
Nearly killed me in my first shot on prisoner. Nearly got killed.
Wow.
It was set outside the gate with someone trying to get away. I can't remember what the actual story was, but I think it was the first thing I did on prisoner, and it was the outside stuff. And the actor that was playing the guy that was driving the car, and there was no real rehearsal for this. And this was the actual rehearsal, that we had this tussle where I got knocked down and he drove off. Well, we did the thing where I got knocked down. He jumped into the car, I was on the ground, and he drove off, and I felt the wheel brush my hair.
Whoa. Wow.
Ouch.
Yeah. Taught me a big lesson, you know, if we're going to do any stunts with cars or anything like that, because it wasn't that, I think it must have been maybe a couple of years before it, where Gregor, when he was on, what was it, Matlock? Was Greg on Matlock? Taylor, yeah, where he killed the cameraman.
No, I don't know that story.
The car accident, yeah. Because they didn't. That's when they finally brought in stunt coordinators. He lost control of the car and smashed into the camera. Yeah.
Good grief.
It was stupid the way they set it up. They put the camera on the curve with a bank behind it on a dirt road, and doing their usual Matlock Police or Division 4 or whatever it was, Bluey maybe, I don't know. But car chase going around a corner on a dirt road. Now he lost control of the car, smashed into the camera, and the camera guy was either the assistant, the focus. Anyway, it was one of the camera guys was killed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a story I didn't know.
Yeah. One of the Crawford stories. Yeah. So we used to do the stupidest things. As I said, I was cast in Crawfords because I could ride a motorbike and I could ride fast and do stunts and fight scenes, all those things. Good thing about the NIDA training that we had too is that we had fight coordinators, and we were taught by stunt people about how to do it. So we could do falls. I could fall off a horse. I could, do fight scenes. things like that. It was fun.
Your stunts
Yeah.
were great. All right, we want to just break down maybe, I know time's getting away from us, but just 2 episodes if we can, and then we'll do the fan question.
Okay.
Episode 40, which is your episode where we meet Jim, directed by Brian, is it Fall? Sorry.
Fall.
Written by Denise Morgan and Dave Worthington. First aired on the 10th of July, 1979. The cameramen were Peter Hine, Ken Mulholland, obviously, and Noel Penn. So what was it like working with that team? And be nice to Ken.
No, I mean, I love the crew. I mean, because for so much of it, I was the only guy in it, really. So, I never took up knitting. I didn't smoke. So in order for me to have any sort of companionship, it was with the crew. They were my guys. We'd go down to the pub and have lunch. It was that was my companionship. So, but Brian was a good. He became a good friend. He was a good bloke. And I think that first episode was Penny Ramsey in that too. I can't remember, but
no, she wasn't in that one.
No. So I don't think we'd been introduced to the family at that stage. Yeah.
No, not at that stage.
But that was the episode I think I was nearly killed. I think that one. I think if it was my first episode, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still gives me nightmares.
Well, let's face it, back in those days, cast and crew were asked to do some pretty crazy things. I mean, I know from my point of view that there wasn't much care and safety involved.
No, the girls were left to fight amongst themselves. They didn't have a fight coordinator or anything like that. So wonder people didn't get hurt.
Wow.
Mm.
So the first scene we see, Eric is sitting down with Vera. Vera's thinking she's going to get the deputy governorship, which she always wanted, and she doesn't get it. And in comes Jim Fletcher, 10 years in Pentridge, a sergeant in the army, 3 years in Vietnam. Do you remember your first day? What was it like on the first day of coming on set?
I don't remember that well. I remember nearly getting killed. That was before we went inside. But it was nice. I knew I'd be working with good people. I didn't know Fiona at all, but I knew Ellie and I knew Patsy. So, there was a familiarity there. And of course, we'd been chums in the before. I don't know whether that was the first scene we shot inside or not, but yeah, I was quite comfortable. I didn't feel any stress.
Yeah.
The dining room, that's where Mr. Fletcher is introduced to the women. Your first scene with the main prisoner with B, Lizzie, Doreen, Lynn. What was it like to work with such actresses as Colette and Kerry and Sheila?
Well, Kerry, how beautiful a woman is that, huh? Yeah. She was just, and went on to be such a good actor. Man, she's still working. She was so wet behind the ears at that stage. She was always, she was wanting to learn more from us. And she was a charming, lovely, beautiful, beautiful woman. Colette, I knew already. Val, I didn't know at all. But I knew she was going to be a formidable presence in the series.
That's the word that comes to mind.
Yeah. Because, she had a lot to prove. She came out of amateur theatre. I don't think she'd done very much professional work at all. But she just took that opportunity and ran with it, And I still see her from time to time. She's kept in touch. And, of course, Sheila. She was a legend when from the Melbourne Theatre Company days. And she always made me laugh, and we were, she was always very naughty with me. She was very funny.
Well, what was something naughty that she did with you?
Oh, I can't tell you that.
Something funny?
No. Let's just say she had a bawdy sense of humour. But no, she was outrageous. I mean, there was no filtering with her. And incredibly smart. That's the other thing about Sheila that a lot of people don't know. She was very, very smart. I think she probably would have had the highest IQ of anybody on that show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's interesting.
So going back to episode 40, we're standing in the reception area with you and Meg Jackson, played by Elspeth Ballantyne. You're talking about the prisoners on work release and rehabilitation programs. And then you cut in saying that married women should be taught to look after their families first. Did that come across as like, were you thinking Jim Fletcher's like a sexist person, or just like traditional old school values as a married man?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that was the way he was written, and he was pretty typical of his time. I don't think we need to apologize for that.
No.
And there are still people that have those attitudes. I mean, here in the United States, they're still saying, a woman's place is in the home. It's not a, the revolution hasn't really infiltrated all societies. So, I think they were being truthful to that character.
Yeah.
But I think, interestingly, in the way the series developed, that, his attitudes did change.
Okay, so we cut to the laundry where Meg introduces you to B. B tells you that she's the queen around Wentworth, like a union boss. And you tell her it's the officers in charge. And then as you're walking out of the laundry, one of the prisoners comes up to you and says, "You can come and see me anytime." Then you say, "Well, it's easy to see while you're here." Classic Jim Fletcher line. Yeah, you had some great lines, actually.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So it was your first scene with vallehman, and you had a lot of scenes in prison with her. What was it like working with Val?
It was good. I mean, she was all stops out. So you always had a lot to work with her. Yeah, I got no complaints about working with her. I never thought to myself, God, I wish that person could act. Sometimes you work with people, you think, oh, they're stilted, their lines, they're not thinking about what they're saying. But no, she was never like that. She's very smart, so she's good.
She coined the nickname Fletch the Lech.
Yeah.
Yes, all right. Well, you may not like it, but
I know the fans liked it. Yeah.
It became synonymous with the sort of character situation. But I presume that title, nickname, was thought out by a writer. Do you know who it was, and what was your feeling regarding being known as Fletch the Lech?
I never liked it. Because that wasn't what he was. He wasn't a pervert.
No.
And he wasn't someone that was coming onto the prisoners.
Yeah.
When he did have romantic relationships, they were usually pretty nicely done. They weren't exploitative. He wasn't using his position, for sexual favors or anything like that. It was because he genuinely cared for people. Yeah. And I like that about his character and about the way they wrote that.
I think the fans would like that too.
Yeah.
I did notice that about those parts with the women and the relationships you had with them. I did notice that also.
Yeah. I mean, these days, if it had been a modern prison, he'd be fired for having any sort of relationship with the inmates. He'd also be subject to all sorts of sensitivity training and everything like that. So it'd be a very different character these days.
Yeah. There's a scene in the laundry where Monica Ferguson is going crazy because she didn't get her parole. She's throwing things everywhere. You step in, settle her down. Vera's really impressed at this time. She's like, "Oh, well, I love how you settled her down." You had a lot of physical scenes and stunts, which we were talking about before, but how did you approach these type of scenes?
Carefully, as I said, we were trained at NIDA, and I'd also worked with a couple of really good stunt coordinators or stunt men. Peter Armstrong comes to mind. And, you learn how to fight without hurting yourself or the person you're fighting with. You learn how to fall. You learn how to, use your body so that people don't get hurt. And I don't know how much we rehearsed that scene, but it was good that who was the character? What was her name? The actress?
Monica was it played by Leslie Baker? Is that right?
Leslie Baker. Yeah, Leslie Baker. She's great. She's terrific. So yeah, she's a pro. So she knew what we had to do together. Yeah. It was
she
good.
was also a singer, was she not?
I don't know about Leslie. Probably.
I think way back. Maybe wrong.
Yeah, she certainly wasn't a stranger to performing. That's for sure.
Now we're going to cut to Ken and introduce episode 109.
Well, 109 was written by Marcus Cooney, directed by Marcus Cole, and I have a story about Marcus. The cameramen were Peter Hine, Noel Penn, and myself, and this first aired in April 30th of 1980. It was a tragic episode because Jim Fletcher's family was having, Jim Fletcher was having an affair with a prisoner, and her husband arranged for Jeff Butler, played by Ray Marr, to kill you, but instead he killed your entire family. Would you like to tell us a bit more about that and the talented Penny Ramsey?
Yeah. Well, Benny, as you know, was married to my good mate, Rod Mulliner, and I knew them from Sydney, knew the Ramsey family and her mum. I was pleased that I was teamed up with Penny, because, we did know each other. And so there's a familiarity there. That was nice. The storyline shocked me, actually. I thought, wow, are they doing this to free me up to have, girlfriends or relationships with people? Why are they killing my whole bloody family? Because, it took away, part of the possibility of ongoing stories, family stories. But, it was very, very dramatic, and it was great to play. One of the good friends of a doctor friend of mine in Melbourne, I never knew he was a big Prisoner fan, but he mentions that episode and that scene. He said, and he described it, he said, you hear the kids outside the door. He said, there's a shot of you smiling, thinking, oh, you're going to see the kid. You just about to answer the door, and then kablooey.
Yeah.
And, it was high drama. It's a great bit of writing, I think, but sad.
Shock and impact.
Yeah.
It was an emotional.
I thought Rod Hardy directed that bit.
Possibly did.
Yeah. I think I remember it was Rod's bit. Could be wrong.
But just going back to Penny Ramsey, I'd just like to tell the fans. So she appeared in 28 episodes of Prisoner, one as your wife. And then the last season she played Amy Ryan, which was the mum of the handyman Steve Ryan. She also appeared in Cop Shop, Matlock Police, Homicide, Division 4, Number 96, and Mrs. Finnegan. Sadly, she lost a battle with cancer in 2009. And her mum was Lois Ramsey, who played Eddie Parslow on Prisoner as well.
Yeah.
Just to recap.
She's a character. Yeah. I knew them both before Prisoner, so yeah, it was great to see them in the show. Yeah.
But no, she was a great actress.
I think she also had a part in The Box as a tea lady, Lois.
Yeah.
From
The
memory.
Box. I vaguely remember The Box.
Yes, well, I worked that.
That was one of the Melbourne shows.
Yes. It was Melbourne's answer to Number 96.
96. I was in that for, I think, 2 episodes. I was a body painter.
Oh.
My scene was painting circles around this poor young lady's breasts. Number 96. They got away with so much stuff back then. They'd never be allowed on air now.
We did see a lot of nudity back then.
We did.
both for both those
male and female. Yeah. Full frontal nudity on broadcast television. My God.
Yeah, well, that was the 70s.
Yep, that was the 70s. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, so a scene I would like to touch on is the one at the hotel, which you just spoke about, and Leela arrives with the kids. And it's a traumatic scene, like it really is, because we do see you in the room and you're smiling because you can hear the kids fighting. It's like they're here, you can't wait to see them. And all of a sudden, bang. Where did you touch on to get that? I mean, I just watched the episode a few nights ago, and just watching the emotion on your face and the scene, what did you draw on to? I know it's a long time ago.
I had a wife and daughter. The thought of losing my wife and daughter like that. I had a daughter. I think she would have been maybe 8 or 9 then. That would have been devastating for me. So it wasn't hard. I mean, I wasn't thinking about my wife and daughter being killed like that. But, as we were talking about acting technique before, it's just, this is what happened to my characters. This happened to me. I am now Jim Fletcher, and I've just lost my wife and kids in the most horrific way.
Yeah.
God, how do you get on with your life,
Yeah.
That's motivation enough.
Yeah. But what disappointed me is that it was barely mentioned again after that in the stories.
Yes, there should have been much more continuity.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was one of the complaints I had, I think, at one stage. I said, hey, where's the follow on from this? What? I'm just suddenly, I'm back at work. I think the next scene was, you should be at home. Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm back at work. Jesus, really?
Well, it was very much the same with Elspeth Ballantyne playing Meg Morris in episode 1, in the first episodes where her husband is knifed or scissored, and then she appears back at work again very, very quickly.
I think in that respect they didn't really think things through very well, and maybe that's the storyliner's faults, maybe, or maybe they just think, on with the show. Show must go on.
So working with Ray Marr, obviously Alf Stewart from Home and Away, that everyone knows him now. Had you worked with Ray prior to Prisoner, or did you know him?
I knew him as an actor. Maybe, we'd had a few beers or something together beforehand, but I don't remember working with him in any show. I might have. Don't remember.
He makes a very good goodie and a very good baddie.
Yeah. No, I always liked Ray. Yeah.
Because he had a few different parts on Prisoner, obviously playing Jeff Butler.
Oh yeah, I think the company loved him. Obviously, they gave him a whole bloody show after that. Yeah, good for him.
He appeared as Governor Craven, which he could get into and sink his teeth into a fair bit there.
Yeah, no, they liked him a lot.
We move on to episode 247, 248, and 249, which is known as the Sandy Edwards riot, written by Ian Bradley. Script editor was Ian Smith. Storyliners, which we know what they are now, John Mortimer, Andrew Kennedy, Dave Worthington, and the cameraman was Ken Mulholland, Peter Hine, Barry Pullen, and directed by Lee Spence.
Lee, yeah.
What a crew.
Yeah, and great, lovely man, Lee Spence.
Yes,
one of my favourites.
He came in not really knowing a great deal about drama as such, or whatever we want to call what Prisoner was, but and we helped him along a little bit. But once he got his traction, he was all ahead full.
Yeah.
He got me up on the dolly that was used outside at different times, and suddenly I was flying around the corridors and thinking to myself, I'm going to come off this if I'm not damn careful. But, and Barry Pullen, what a lovely guy.
Yeah.
He's been such a good mate over the years, and it saved my bacon many times.
Yeah.
So they were good. And Peter Hine, well.
Yeah.
Big Pete. Lovely guy.
Yep.
We cut to the scene which is outside the prison after Sandy Edwards has taken it over, and you're holding the big rifle. You've offered one to Meg, but she doesn't want to take it. This is at nighttime, and then they start throwing firebombs at you, and all sorts of things are going on. What sort of preparation went into a scene like that? And I'm probably going to ask you both because you were there as well, Ken.
They were pretty careful about it from my memory. I don't think we got hit by anything.
The outside stuff was location, so I wasn't involved in that. Anything that happened in the studio, I would have been, of course. From our point of view, we just had to not bump into the furniture and remember to stay out of the way of charging B. Smiths. Or at this case, Sandy Edwards.
It was that was a good, nice, dramatic storyline. That was fun to do.
There's a scene of you with the hook and the rope climbing up the wall. Can you tell us?
Yeah, yeah. I threw the hook up the top and then climbed up the wall.
Did you actually climb it?
Of course, Ken. I was an athletic bloke. I could do stuff like that. This is the magic of cinema. We never give away our secrets, do we?
Yes, like the endless corridors in the studios.
That's right.
Cutting from shot to shot and moving camera from one end to the other sort of thing. And those corridors look as if they go
forever. Yeah.
We cut to the morning and you walk out of the visiting suite, which is the headquarters now because of the riot and everything's being taken over inside the prison by Sandy. Mrs. Davidson comes rushing in. It's a cold Melbourne morning, fog's blowing out of people's mouths. And Erica asked you, has there been any developments? And you said, no, not since you told us not to do anything, because she was away at the time. You had a lot of scenes with Patsy. What was it like working with Patsy? I know we touched on it a little before, but
yeah. No, Patsy was fun. Again, I hadn't worked with her, but I knew of her time with the Melbourne Theatre Company, and so I had a lot of respect for her. And she had a presence about her, which was nice to work off. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a mixed bag with Patsy sometimes, because I could see that sometimes she was a little insecure, but that would be like maybe a rehearsal or a first take or something like that. She might just be a little unsure about either how to play it or whether she was going to remember her lines or not. But then then she'd be right on it and she'd be terrific. She'd be fabulous. So sometimes I was a little nervous as to whether she was going to come up to to speed, if you like. But she always did. She never disappointed me. She's wonderful.
And you worked with her a lot too, Ken.
Yes, and to my regret, I remember the first day when we were doing the big stabbing scene and so forth, and I was talking to Patsy, and I told her a rather blue joke, and I do regret it.
Yeah, no, she was very proper.
Yes, yes. Sorry, Matt, did you ever blow any lines, Gerard?
Did I ever what?
Blow any lines?
Yeah. I think I did. I don't know. I used to make them up a lot. I know that. I mean,
I can't remember you ever
blowing a line.
Blowing a line.
That's good. Thank you. That's good to know. I know that Coral Druin often said that she barely recognised her scripts in my scenes. So either I made them up or I altered them somewhat. As I was saying to you before, provided you knew what you had to say, the actual words you used are not as important, really. You're not playing Shakespeare. But I tried my best. I don't think I ever blew lines.
No, well, as I say, I can't recall.
I remember I always prided myself being able to hit the mark without looking down. I knew I was, but it was. We'd get really annoyed if we had to redo a shot because we were not in the right position or something like that. And I remember we became quite famous for our lean-ins. Like we'd be in a 3 scene and we'd see, I'm being masked here, so we'd go.
Yes.
That would happen quite often. We'd go, no, I'm in shock.
I used to lean out sometimes and say to the cast, I see the lens sees me.
You. Yeah, that's right.
There's actually a
Matt?
question I did want to ask that I haven't put in here. It was just going back to your lines and saying things. Did you follow the script a lot, or that you weren't following the script? Did you have that sort of creative freedom, I guess, to go off script a little bit and put your own into it?
I don't know whether we had the freedom to do it, but again, as Ken will tell you, it was the pressure of getting the amount of material in the can, or recorded. So as long as it made sense, I don't think anyone objected. I don't remember ever. Maybe once or twice you might have had the script person up at the booth say, "Well, that's not what's written there," and then the director might say, "Oh, that's good. Let's go. Move on to the next scene." That's possible that happened. As again, it's a long time ago. I don't remember everything, but I do think I was professional. I hope I didn't cause trouble for people. For the production crew, I was happy to cause trouble with the producers, but with the crew and with the directors and with my fellow actors, I hope I was always good to work with. I hope so. They might tell you differently. I don't know.
You actually did feature on the Goof tape as well.
Oh, I used to love making those up.
I even got a part in one of those. Matt, do we have some Facebook?
We do. We've got a massive. There was a huge response to the fan questions. There was over 60. So obviously we don't have time for 60. So I've tried to be fair and pick out the the ones that we're going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one's not really a question, but it's Brandon Hayes, who was on Facebook. He just wanted to say that you're a legend.
No.
And that he loves your acting.
Well, thank you, Brendan. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Is the story true that Jim was only to leave for a short time, but they decided to not bring him back as they wanted to keep Powell as Deputy Governor? And this is from James Miller from Scotland.
Oh, Scotland, what a beautiful part of the world. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't heard that before. You might be right, but I just don't know. I'm sorry. I can't enlighten you about that.
No, that's okay. Richard Bobbins Duffer from the UK has asked, who does Gerard still keep in touch with, if anyone? And if he had to go back in time, is there anything he'd do differently? Would he have still taken the role?
What would I have done differently? I probably would have stayed in it longer, I think. I think I would. I think that would have been the smart thing for me to do. Who knows? What was the first part of the question? Do I keep in touch with? Yeah, Val. I've done a couple of events in England with Val, and I see the crew when we do like anniversary get-togethers in Melbourne. I've done 2 events in Birmingham and 1 in Edinburgh. I enjoy those. It's lovely to meet all the UK fans. It's a real pleasure. Supposed to be doing one in Melbourne this last year, but of course COVID stopped that.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to that.
I've got one from John James from the UK. What's your fondest memory of that time? And do you ever go back and watch the series?
Like a lot of actors, Kate Winslet comes to mind. We don't like to watch ourselves. I remember when I was doing it, often when the episodes would go to air, we'd have a discussion about them the next day. And I'd never enter into those discussions because I'd never watch it. I never wanted to be self-conscious in my acting. And if I saw myself, I always felt there was a danger of me thinking, oh, I could have done that better. And, that just sort of interferes with the process. So I didn't. I have seen the odd episode, especially when someone puts something on Facebook and they say, oh, you're featured in this episode, and they'd have an excerpt of it there and I'd go and have a look at it. And someone sent me a DVD with some of the episodes I was in and I had a look at those, and it's like looking at a totally different person. And I go, oh yeah, he could act. It's all right.
Nick King from Australia. How did Gerard feel about being the first eye candy as far as screws went?
I never knew I was eye candy.
Well, you are.
I never thought of it like that in any way at all. In fact, to my knowledge, I don't think I was ever cast as eye candy. When I got parts, I was usually, either in all those Crawford episodes, I was the baddie. I was the hoodlum, the biker, Luke's Kingdom, I suppose, was a bit different. I had some I was just I suppose, a good foil for Oliver. But I don't remember being cast as a leading man as such. I've always been a character actor as far as I was concerned. I never thought about being eye candy. What sort of candy was I,
Deborah Coleman from South Wales says, how fab that you are interviewing him, Matt. I've been watching Prisoner for over 40 years and have always fancied Fletch. He was so handsome in the show, and I was gutted when he left. Please ask him what it was like working with Sheila Florence. His character had a soft spot for Lizzie.
As did I. I think it comes through. Yeah, no, I love working with Sheila. She was a good mate.
Yeah, it was good.
Also, she wanted to ask what it was like working with Elspeth Ballantyne, who I happen to like working with very much.
Oh, Ellie's the consummate pro. She was always reliable on, another NIDA graduate. She was one of the very first NIDA graduates. She was only a kid when she went through NIDA. She was married to a mate I used to play golf with. She was reliable, pleasant, didn't let you get away with any crap. She was just a thoroughgoing professional actor.
Yeah.
I got to work with Dennis Miller on Brumby Innes.
Yeah.
The production that we did at Channel O back then.
Right. Yeah. Well, I knew him when they were in Sydney. When he was in Sydney, we played a lot of golf together.
Seemed like a very nice guy.
Yeah.
Tracy Ann from New York City would like to know if you're single and if you ever get to New York.
Tracy, I'm in my mid-70s now. I think you're still thinking of me as I was when I was in the show. No, I'm very, very happily married to, and my second wife, we've been together since 1988.
Do you ever get to New York?
I've been to New York a few times. Yes, yeah.
I was just asking for a friend.
Yeah, no, I go there. If I go there, we get a chance. I've got a friend he's a Broadway producer, and he lets us stay in his apartment, and we get to see the shows when we're there.
Yes, and you are a big show goer as well as film goer. Yes. I remember you were very keen about Raiders of the Lost Ark when it first hit Melbourne.
Movies, yeah. I mean, that's been a big part of my career. I've written movies. I've produced stuff. So, yeah. I met my wife through writing a script, and I'm so glad I did, because she's been the center of my life since 1988.
So sorry to see he's not single. Alan Alexander, who's actually a massive Prisoner fan. I mean, I know there's a lot of fans, but he goes to the extent of putting scenes together, putting like Rita Connors and B. Smith crossing over. He's from Ireland. He's asked if he was to have a creative input to a modern day version of Jim for Prisoner, but in today's TV landscape in 2021, would he change anything about the character Jim for today's audiences? And if so, what and why?
Well, yeah, I think you'd have to, given modern sensibilities. As I said, if he was a prison officer, he'd be going through sensitivity training. He'd know the taboos. He probably wouldn't even get the job, because if he's suffering from PTSD coming back from, Afghanistan or something, he may not be fit. But if he was, I think there'd be an opportunity for him to have counselling sessions and to talk about PTSD and how it does affect, all these young men that go away, experience the horrors of war, and then come back, and many of them just can't cope with coming back, and a lot of them commit suicide. It's a big problem here in the US. I don't know how it's affected Australian soldiers, but my dad fought in World War II, interesting enough, in the Middle East. Never talked about his experiences, but I know from his behavior that he was suffering from PTSD. It led to terrible things in my family. these days, you know, he'd be getting treated. He would be, you know, he'd be being treated sympathetically. And, you know, as far as I know, the only time he ever talked about the war was with his buddies on Anzac Day, and that was it.
Wow.
You know, all he talked about were the sights that he saw when he was over there. But he, you know, he was in serious, you know, battles. And as a kid, you'd say, "Well, tell us about the war, Dad." "Oh, no, you don't want to hear about all that. You know, it's over now."
Yeah. Wow.
Some things are too painful to talk about. But I think it would give, I don't know what they're doing in Wentworth because I haven't seen it. I don't know whether the Jim Fletcher character is like a war vet. I don't know. But if I was storylining that for now, yeah, sure, I'd bring that up as being part of the stories because I think it's an important story to tell.
I've got one from Connor Muller, who is an Australian huge fan.
Yeah.
Quick question: does he still get stopped in the street for his role on Prisoner?
No, no one recognises me. I'm in America now. Even in Australia, it doesn't happen. But it was funny. I mentioned that I did Lion in Winter and working with an English actor that was playing my son, and we'd been running for about 2 weeks, and he hadn't looked at the program and he hadn't looked at what I'd done before, and he came to the dressing room one night and he said, "You were Fletcher." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "My God," he said, "when I was at college in England," he said, "you know, we'd come back to the dorm, you know, we'd get stoned and we'd watch that show every night." And he didn't recognize me, you know, and he'd been working with me for, you know, about 4 weeks at that stage. So what the hell, you know, fame is fleeting.
It was funny. I actually learned, I was speaking to Ken about it last week, that when Prisoner was syndicated into the USA in 1980, it was actually one of the highest rating shows past the Johnny Carson show at the time.
I never knew that. They never told us that, you know.
Yeah.
The only way we knew that it was happening in the US, and this is another funny story. This guy, did I tell you this? This may have been before we started recording. We had this guy called Scott from Grand Rapids, Michigan, who somehow got through the switchboard to our telephone down in the tunnel, and he'd want to speak to Fiona or myself. And he'd ring about every week and talk to us for about an hour or two each time, you know, between the pair of us. And we found out that he'd been in institutions most of his life, and he was now living a relatively full life, not in an institution. And we thought, oh, good for you. And sent us a clipping from a local newspaper. It was one of those feel-good stories about how this guy who'd been in institutions all his life, finally with medication and therapy, he's now out in the, you know, has his own apartment and all that. And I said to him one day, I said, "Scott," I said, "look, this is very nice of you to call us, but, you know, this is before the sort of things that we can do now, where it's not costing us anything for communicating. You know, these were very expensive phone calls." And we said, "You know, you shouldn't be spending all your money on talking to us." And he just laughed and he said, "Oh, don't worry about that." He said, "I'm using a hotel courtesy phone."
Oh dear, oh dear.
So that's one of the reasons we knew we were in the US. But and then about a week after that, you know, no more calls from Scott. So somebody was looking at the bills, telephone bills of that hotel, and saying, "What are all these phone calls to Australia all about? Who's making these calls? Who's making these calls?" They're actually from the courtesy phone, sir. Oh God, shut that down, quick smile. You know?
Because back then it would have been something like $1 a minute or something to call overseas.
Oh, you know, when my wife and I were communicating when she was in America, I was in Australia at that time in '88, we'd spend thousands of dollars on phone calls, you know. So yeah, that cost him a lot of money, or cost the hotel a lot of money. And then of course there was the famous Frankie Doyle funeral in the US.
Yes.
What was that about? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I heard about this, that actually there was a group of women, I think gay women, that actually had a funeral for Frankie Doyle.
Wow.
Yes. There was
I don't know which city. I don't know what city, whether it was New York or Los Angeles. I don't know. But I think we were in like about 39 or 40 transmission areas, but we were never like a network show. It was always a local, individual market that we were in.
Mm.
I actually saw on Facebook last week, there's a lot of fans that still, every anniversary of Sheila Florence's death, they visit the grave and
how nice. Yeah.
stand there, clean it up, have a drink. And it's amazing.
I hope they were using a cardboard handbag for having a drink with it.
We should explain that cardboard handbags were actually what would we call them? Cheapish wine.
Box wine.
In a wooden box.
Yeah, one of Australia's great inventions.
Yes. Moving on, we've got Leanne Abbott from Port Macquarie saying, I'd love to meet Gerard one day. He has some pretty full-on storylines like the bombing with the death of his family. That must have taken someone strong-willed to film those scenes.
Mm. Yeah, they were hard. They were hard. Port Macquarie, loved that. That's where my grandfather was born. A lot of my family comes from that area. So, yeah. Maybe we can have a meet one day, have a cup of tea or something.
Fantastic. Jessica Spencer from Australia. I was always impressed by the way he took down Monty, which I'm assuming Monica Ferguson. Made me wonder if he had any martial arts training, as it looked too real to be cut and edited.
It wasn't cut or edited, but as actors, we worked that out. As I was explaining before, we got a lot of training about how to fight and how to do these things. And I was working with a pro. I was working with someone that knew what they were doing.
Shannon Green from Melbourne in Australia says, 40 years on, does Gerard think that Jim Fletcher's character, a symptom of the times, had elements of sexism, specifically in the storyline with Janet Conway? Would he change anything about Jim today?
I don't know what the sexism was with Janet Conway. I don't know what that was about. She was the other
female officer.
The other officer, wasn't she? Female officer, yeah. Yeah. I mean, for today, yes, you'd have to change it, but I think it was appropriate for his character. I didn't have any argument about it. You just had to play it. It's like, if you're playing a killer, how do you do that if you're not, not a killer? You have to imaginatively go there. You have to, put yourself into the mindset of someone that's doing something like that.
She actually gave you a nice slap across the face at the last episode you were in when she found out you were taking the governorship somewhere else.
She did? Oh, I don't remember that. I know the actor very well. She was a lot of fun. I did a play with her.
She was great.
Yeah.
Steve Moore from Chicago said, "Hi, Matt. I'm Steve from Chicago, USA. Would Gerard have liked it if a romantic relationship between Jim Fletcher and Vera Bennett had been further explored on the show?"
Yeah, I think that would have been interesting. I think that would have been good. I think that would have been good for both characters, I think. They could have gone that way, but they didn't.
Yeah. Would have been good to see.
Yeah, I think so.
This is a fan from South Africa, Trevelyan Govinder. His question is, what was it like getting acting roles back in the day, and what does an actor do when their run ends on a show like Prisoner? Keep breathing, I guess.
Keep working if you can. Yeah. Make a living. When I first came out of drama school, it was a very small pool of actors around, so count myself as being very fortunate to have come into the business at the time that I did. It was Australian television was getting rolling. There wasn't much up till then, there was only a few shows. Homicide was one in Melbourne. The Australian Broadcasting Commission always had drama shows. But I actually started doing radio before I did any TV and theatre, and my first show out of NIDA was Bye Bye Birdie at a theatre restaurant. And second show was touring Queensland with a small team of actors playing Shakespeare to the schools. And then straight out of that came into, I think maybe Boys in the Band was the next play that I did. And then, I never had to worry about getting work. and I'm not sort of saying it's because I was such a wonderful, desirable actor. I think it was because there was the beginning of a lot of work, guest roles on television and a little bit in film, but there just weren't that many of us. And so, nothing like it is today when you've got so many good actors. I mean, I just saw The Dry at our local theatre. What a fine, fine film that is. Beautiful young actors, really, really good. One of the best Australian films I think has ever been made. It's just terrific. If you haven't seen it, go and see The Dry. It's great.
Adam Roberts from Cornwall, UK. Out of all the actors you worked with on Prisoner, who was your favourite to work with and why?
Well, of course, Sheila, that goes without saying. But when you say who was your favourite to work with, it depends. She was my favourite person to be around. When it came to working with actors, people I had to play off, I think probably Val and Fiona and some of the guest stars that came in. We had so many really good actors that came into it. Diana Craig comes to mind, Pat Bishop, beautiful, no longer with us, beautiful, fine actor, Sandy Gore. So many, top of the line, wonderful actors. And so, it's hard to draw just one out and say, who was your favorite amongst the regular cast, the people to be around. And then some of the male actors that came into it were a lot of fun to work with. It was challenging. They challenged you. They were good actors, and there was a lot going on between us. So, but for the long run, obviously, Sheila and probably Val.
Great actors.
Yeah.
I've got one from Anne Pitkin from London, England, and I actually know Anne. She's an artist, and she asks, what has helped you through the pandemic? Question one. And your character in Prisoner liked to run. Do you also like to run?
Hate running, always have. I was a swimmer. At that stage in Prisoner, I was doing a bit of running because that was the start of the jogging boom, and you were all supposed to do it to keep fit, but I never liked it. I couldn't run long distances because I hated running slowly. I always had to run fast, and I always exhausted myself far too quickly. I couldn't pace myself. But swimming, surfing, bike riding, tennis, golf, a lot of different sports I like to play, but not running. How did I get through COVID? Well, I live in a very beautiful place. We watched a lot of binge television. Binge shows on Netflix. I think I've seen just about everything worth seeing. Got hooked on a soap opera, which I never thought I would, called Jane the Virgin, which if you haven't seen it, it's a telenovela, and it's so funny and it's so cool, and it's like hundreds of episodes, like Prisoner, and I watched every one of them. And tried to go for a walk every day because I didn't have to mingle with people here. Got my vaccination as soon as they came on board. I got them like about 5-6 weeks ago here. So I'm still a bit nervous being around people because even though you're vaccinated, there's no guarantee that you're not going to get it again. But yeah, so it was a tough time. One of the things that was hard about it is that I lost a really, really big voiceover job, a national television commercial, which was for Universal Orlando because they shut the theme park down. But that was doing my a voiceover for them, and it only played for a couple of months before they shut the whole thing down. But that would have provided enough money for me to get through the rest of the next 2 years. But they haven't come back yet. They might still, but never mind.
Yeah, I mean, things are starting to slowly open, which is good, and more people are getting vaccinated. And I got my jab a few weeks ago, the Pfizer one, which was great.
The Pfizer one, yeah. We had the Moderna.
Caitlin Taylor from London said, would he like to come for tea next time he's in London?
Yes, at the Dorchester. Thank you. Yes.
Jennifer Agro from Queens, USA. I would love to know what he would imagine for Fletcher's life after he left Wentworth, and also which one of his co-stars made him laugh the most.
Back to Sheila again. What would he have done? I started writing something about it. I thought, well, see what I could make up for him, and I thought, well, what if he left all that prison stuff altogether and sort of went to some country that needed help, doing work to help people. I thought that would be a good future for Jim. If he was a doctor, I'd say, Doctors Without Borders, or some sort of relief work, working somewhere, helping people. I think that would have been a good future for Jim.
I like that.
Yeah.
You could try writing.
Yeah. I started on it. I gave up on it. I couldn't think where properly, and I just thought it sounded a bit inauthentic unless I researched it well. But I could give it a go.
Yeah.
Working for a relief organization somewhere in some place that's in trouble.
Before we let you go, I know we've taken up a lot of your time today, but is there any projects that you're currently working on at the moment that you can tell the fans about? We know you're doing voiceovers and things like that.
Yes, and if you want to see my voiceover work, gerardmaguire.com is my website for voiceovers only. So you'll see a lot of the work I've done, including stuff I did for South Africa, and the one that I did for Orlando. I've done a couple where apparently I do a pretty good impersonation of Richard Attenborough. So I get commercials doing Richard Attenborough stuff. So I have my own studio here in Sedona, which is all broadcast quality. And I do work for jobs all over the world, really. Things have dropped off a little bit because of COVID. And there's also, there's sometimes the fashions of professional voiceovers change. And now they seem to be going for very, very young, sort of hip voices, which I'm not. But when the right job comes along, especially character stuff these days, I do a lot of character voiceovers now. But for me it sort of stopped for me a little bit when I had to come back to Sedona after being in LA, because I was starting to get work that requires you to go to studios. But then when COVID hit, you can't go to the studios anymore. So I came back here and operated from my studio here. But if I went back to LA, I suppose I'd be looking at working on maybe some video game shows or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we, before we started recording, we were just talking about how you and Ken work together quite closely on Prisoner. How long has it been since you and Ken have seen each other and spoken to each other like this?
40 years, I suppose. Were you at the anniversary, Ken? I can't remember. The one we did in Melbourne?
The 40th.
Yeah. No, the one we had for the bushfire relief. That one is at Channel 10. You weren't there with that one. Okay. So it's 40 years, I suppose. Something like that.
Almost. It's getting close to.
Yes, since 86 or no, what was my last show? 79 to about 82, I think was the last one I did.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Just a question from me for the fans. What's your favourite author?
Oh, I've just read this wonderful book called Clara and the Sun. He's the guy that wrote Japanese author that wrote Remains of the Day. Jane, the author of Clara and the Sun, Ishiguro. Yeah, somebody Ishiguro. Anyway, he's a wonderful writer, even Japanese name, but he writes in English, and he wrote Remains of the Day. And if you haven't read Clara and the Sun, fabulous book, really good. There are a couple of others. I like David Mitchell, who wrote Bone Clocks and The Thousand Summers of Jason de Groot, Martin Amis, and of the Aussie, Peter Carey. These are all books. If I see a new book of any of these, novel of any of these authors, I read them straight away. And I occasionally get lost in sort of English mystery writers. There's so many of these women that write police. I can't remember their names now, but I read a lot of them. I read a lot, put it that way, Ken.
Right. Thank you for that. I'm sure the fans would be interested to know. From my point of view, your music, your favourite music.
I'm still back in the day. I mean, if I look over here, I see Miles Davis. I see, what have we got here? Stuff that probably people wouldn't know much about, really.
Is that vinyl? You've still got vinyl there?
Oh my God, yes.
Wow.
I play a lot of vinyl.
Oh, you play? Okay.
Yes, I have a big collection too.
Oh, you have?
This is Buzz Skaggs, by the way.
Ah, yes.
Of course, you know, I'm not a great fan of what the kids are into, really. I'm happy to stay locked in the 70s or the early 80s.
Because I was in the record business.
And besides that, my beautiful wife was in the record business. And
where is your wife? She's on the side there, is she? You can't see her.
No, you won't either. She's camera shy, but she was head of ABC Records, and she publicity director for ABC Records, and she was a major vinyl collector, and we have it all here. We have unopened Beatles. We have just about, you know, we've got a major collection of vinyl.
That's how wonderful.
Yeah,
amazing. Can I just say, as a fan of Prisoner myself, and I'd just like to say on behalf of the fans, thank you to you for being Jim Fletcher. You know, as a child, I was watching all the reruns and grew up Prisoner, and I met you back in 2000. You probably don't remember me because I probably look a lot different, but we met at the AIDS event that they did in 2000. And
2000, yeah, that was a good event, a great event. Yeah.
And it was great, and you're an amazing actor, amazing person, and oh, that's the author.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's his first name?
Kazuo, Kazuo.
Kazuo Ishiguro. Kazuo Ishiguro. That's it. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I'm humbled by people's enthusiasm for this show. As I said to Ken earlier on, I never thought that of all the work I've done in my career, this was the thing that would still be one I'd probably be remembered more, you know, remembered for
Gerard,
the rest of my history, I suppose.
the fans have made you.
Yeah, and it's the as my wife just interjected there, she said it's the fans really that have made me appreciate it more. Yeah. So thank you guys, thank you women, thank you everyone, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for those that want to see your voiceover work, we'll put up a link to your website on here as well, which is gerardmaguire.com.
That's right.
They can see all your wonderful work there, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Like, really, thank you for giving your time. And
that's right.
Back then.
Also on YouTube, I've got a YouTube channel. You want to look at that for Gerard Maguire? You'll find it somewhere. But I'm just starting to put some stuff on. No, people have been sending me things. There's an episode of Homicide there if you want to have a look at it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you to the host Ken as well for being here, and it's just great going back down memory lane. And
it is. It's great fun.
Yeah. We've got another huge guest on next episode, which we won't mention just yet, but we're looking forward to that as well.
Cool. I'll make sure I'll watch.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Gerard.
Bye now.